What happens when an entitled duchess meets her match on daytime television? Today, we dive into one of the most explosive interviews in recent memory. Meghan Markle on The View. From accusations of racism to heated debates about privilege. This interview had it all, and by the end, even Whoopi Goldberg had reached her breaking point. Subscribe and drop a comment below, 'cause this story only gets wilder. The studio lights blazed as The View's iconic theme filled the air. Whoopi Goldberg sat at the center of the table, flanked by co-hosts Joy Behar, Sarah Haynes, Alyssa Farah Griffin, and Sunny host. The energy was electric, anticipation thick as they prepared to welcome their guest, the Duchess of Sussex herself, Meghan Markle. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Meghan Markle, Whoopi announced with her signature gravitas, though there was a hint of weariness in her voice that regular viewers would recognize. Meghan walked onto the set in a flowing beige ensemble, the picture of expensive minimalism. Her smile was perfectly practiced as she waved to the audience. But even as she took her seat, her posture suggested she wasn't here to play nice. Meghan. Welcome to The View, Whoopi began, professional but guarded. We're so glad to have you here today. Thank you, Whoopi. Though I must say, I'm a bit surprised by some of the topics your producers suggested we discuss, Meghan replied, her voice carrying that familiar blend of wounded innocence and barely concealed irritation. Joy Behar, never one to shy away from potential drama, jumped in. Well, Meghan, there's certainly a lot to talk about to a departure from royal duties. Your Oprah interview, your various projects. Where would you like to start? Meghan's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. I think it's important to address the elephant in the room first. The way I've been treated by the media, by certain members of my family, okay? And frankly, by shows like this one, has been nothing short of unconscionable. Sarah Haynes shifted uncomfortably. Meghan, I think we've always tried to be fair in our coverage of you and Harry. Fair? Meghan's voice rose slightly, her practiced composure starting to crack. Sarah, with all due respect, you've aired segments questioning my motives, my authenticity, even my mental health struggles. How is that fair? Alyssa Farah Griffin tried to interject diplomatically. I think what Sarah means is that we've covered all sides of the story. Journalism requires us to ask tough questions. Tough questions or character assassination? Meghan shot back, eyes flashing. There's a difference, Alyssa, and you know it. Whoopi sensed the tension rising and tried to steer the conversation back. Meghan, I understand you face criticism, but surely you also understand that public figures, especially in your position, will face scrutiny. Scrutiny? Yes, racist attacks and deliberate misrepresentation. No, Meghan replied firmly. And Whoopi, I'm surprised you of all people would dismiss the racial component of what I've experienced. The audience fell silent, sensing they were witnessing something unprecedented. Whoopi's expression hardened a warning sign for anyone who knew her. I'm not dismissing anything, Meghan, Whoopi said, carefully. But it's important to be precise about these accusations. Precise. Meghan laughed, but there was no humor. The precision is in the pattern, Whoopi. Every successful woman of color who speaks her truth faces this same playbook. Question her motives, attack her character, make her the villain. Finally, Sunny host spoke, having remained unusually quiet. Meghan, as a woman of color myself, I understand the challenges you're referring to, but don't you think some criticism might be valid about the timing of certain revelations or the way you've handled specific situations? Meghan turned to Sunny, betrayal written across her face. Sunny, I expected better from you. Sitting here, questioning my truth, my lived experience, that's exactly the problem. You should be supporting me, not tearing me down. I'm not tearing you down, Sunny replied evenly. I'm asking legitimate questions about your choices and their consequences. My choices. Meghan's voice grew louder, her carefully constructed public persona starting to unravel. My choice to marry the man I love. My choice to start a family. My choice to speak out against racism and institutional gaslighting. Joy Behar seized the moment. Meghan, nobody's questioning your right to marry Harry or start a family. But some other choices, the timing of your Oprah interview, the way you've handled family relationships, those are fair topics for discussion. Fair, according to whom? Meghan demanded. According to a media establishment that profits from my pain. According to people who have never walked in my shoes, never faced what I faced. Whoopi's patience was thinning. Meghan, with respect, you've had a platform most people can only dream of. You've told your story to millions. That's not being silenced. Having a platform and being heard are two different things, Whoopi. Meghan replied coldly. I'm disappointed that this show, which claims to support women, is falling into the same tired patterns of victim blaming and gaslighting. Tension filled the studio. Camera operators adjusted angles. Producers frantically communicated through earpieces. The audience sat in stunned silence. Alyssa tried one last time to diffuse the situation. I think we all want to understand your perspective, Meghan. But surely you could see how some of your actions might be perceived differently by different people. Perceived differently by people who refuse to acknowledge their own biases, Meghan said, eyes flashing. You should understand what it's like to have every move you make scrutinized and misrepresented. Meghan snapped. That's exactly why I'm trying to have a nuanced conversation. Alyssa replied, her own composure beginning to crack. But you seem determined to paint anyone who asks a challenging question as racist or malicious. Meghan's eyes narrowed. And you seem determined to minimize the very real discrimination I faced, the microaggressions, the coded language, the double standards. It's all there if you're willing to see it. Sarah Haynes, visibly uncomfortable, tried to diffuse the tension. Meghan, maybe we could focus on something more positive, your charitable work. Your projects. What brings you joy these days? I'll tell you what would bring me joy. Sarah, Meghan said, her voice cold and steady. Accountability, acknowledgement, admission that I've been treated unfairly by institutions that claim to value diversity and inclusion, but practice something entirely different. Whoopi had had enough. Meghan, I think you're asking for something that might not be realistic. The world isn't going to apologize for every criticism or challenging question. I'm not asking the world to apologize, Meghan shot back, her voice rising. I'm asking for basic human decency and recognition of the truth. And apparently, that's too much to ask from this panel. The studio fell into stunned silence. The audience collectively held its breath. Whoopi's expression shifted from professional courtesy to something far sterner. Her eyebrows knitting together like a warning. Excuse me, she said slowly, her voice dropping into that low, commanding tone. Did you just suggest this panel lacks basic human decency? Meghan paused, a flicker of realization passing over her face, but then she doubled down. I'm suggesting that the questions you're asking, the way you're framing this conversation, reveal a fundamental lack of understanding of what I've endured, what you've endured, she added sharply. Joy Behar's voice cracked. Meghan, you married a prince. You lived in palaces. You had the world's attention. Many would consider that fortunate. Fortunate. Meghan's laugh was sharp and bitter. Joy, would you call it fortunate to have your mental health destroyed? To have your family turn against you? To have your own father sell stories about you to tabloids? That's personal family stuff, Sarah interjected gently. Every family has problems. The difference is yours played out on a global stage because of choices you and Harry made. Meghan spun to face her, composure completely gone. Choices we made. Sarah, we didn't choose to be hounded by paparazzi. We didn't choose racist articles. We didn't choose to have our privacy invaded at every turn. But you did choose to give that Oprah interview, Sanoni pointed out calmly. We had no choice. Meghan exploded. We tried to handle things quietly, privately, through proper channels. But when an institution prioritizes its image over the safety and well-being of its members, sometimes You have to speak your truth publicly. Alyssa leaned forward, measured and precise. Meghan, I understand feeling unheard. But surely, you see how some might view that interview as one-sided, not giving the other parties a chance to respond. One-sided. Meghan's voice rose, cutting through the audience. Alyssa, the other side has had centuries to tell their story. They have an entire media machine working for them. When exactly was I supposed to speak my truth? Whoopi's fingers drummed on the table, a warning rhythm. Meghan, it seems you believe your truth is the only one that matters. No, Whoopi, Meghan shot back, her voice dripping with conviction. The issue is that you think there are two sides to racism. There aren't. Either something is racist, or it isn't. Either an institution supports its diverse members, or it doesn't. The studio fell silent again, tension crackling like electricity. Whoopi's eyes narrowed. When she spoke, every word carried the weight of decades in the industry. Young lady, you need to check yourself right now. You did not get to come on my show and lecture me about racism. You do not get to sit at this table and act like you invented struggle. Meghan's face flushed, but she pressed on. I'm not saying I invented struggle. I'm saying my struggle is valid and deserves acknowledgement without being constantly questioned and diminished. No one's diminishing your struggle, Joy interjected, patience wearing thin. But you can't expect to be immune from all criticism just because you face challenges. I don't expect immunity, Meghan said through gritted teeth. I expect criticism to be fair-based in reality, not racist stereotypes or deliberate mischaracterizations. Stara tried once more to bridge the gap. Meghan, we all agree you faced unfair treatment in some areas. Okay. But isn't it possible some criticism is legitimate concerns about how you handled certain situations? My approach. Meghan's voice, now openly hostile, cutting through the studio like a blade. Sarah, what exactly is wrong with my approach? Meghan demanded, eyes flashing. Speaking honestly about my experiences, protecting my family, refusing to be silenced by an institution that clearly didn't value me. Hey, no one's asking you to be silenced, Sunny said firmly. But maybe consider that the way you've chosen to speak out carries consequences, some of which might be self-inflicted. Meghan whipped around, fury burning in her gaze. Self-inflicted. Sunny, I cannot believe you just said that. You, a woman of color, are telling me that the racism I've faced is self-inflicted. That's not what I said, Sunny replied, calm but tense. I said, some consequences of how you've handled certain situations might be so. There's a difference. No, there isn't, Meghan shot back. That's victim blaming, plain and simple. And frankly, it's disgusting coming from someone who should understand exactly what I'm talking about. Alyssa couldn't hold back. Meghan, you can't just throw around accusations of racism and victim blaming every time someone disagrees with you or asks a tough question. I'm not throwing anything around, Meghan said coldly. I'm calling out what I see. It's a panel of women who claim to support other women, but are willing to tear down a woman of color who dares to speak her truth. Okay. Whoopi slammed her hands on the table. The sound cut through the studio like a gunshot. That's enough, she said, voice sharp and commanding. You do not get to come on this show and tell us who we are or what we stand for. I'm not telling you who you are, Whoopi, Meghan shot back. I'm telling you what you're doing. And what you're doing is perpetuating the same harmful narratives that have been used against women like me for generations. Women like you. Whoopi's tone went icy. What exactly do you mean by women like me? Meghan hesitated, then pressed on, pride refusing to let her back down. Women of color who dare to speak truth to power. Women who refuse to be grateful for scraps. Women who demand better and get punished for it. The studio was silent, the audience tense, sensing history unfolding. The other panelists exchanged uneasy glances, but no one dared interrupt. Joy tried one last time to reason. Meghan, I think we've gotten off track. No one here is trying to punish you for speaking your truth. We're trying to have a balanced conversation about complex issues. Balanced. Meghan laughed bitterly. Joy, there's nothing balanced about this. From the moment I sat down, it's been an attack disguised as journalism character assassination with a smile. That was the final straw. Whoopi rose slowly, her presence filling the studio. Her face was a mask of controlled fury, her voice carrying the weight of decades in the business. Let me tell you something, Duchess, Whoopi began, voice sharp with sarcasm. I've been in this business longer than you've been alive. I've faced real racism, real discrimination, real struggles you couldn't imagine in your worst nightmares. Meghan opened her mouth, but Whoopi held up a hand. I'm not finished. You want to talk about women of color, speaking truth to power? I was doing that when you were still figuring out which fork to use at fancy dinners. So don't sit at my table and lecture me about what it means to be a black woman in America. Meghan's face went pale, jaw set in stubborn defiance. Whoopi, you don't know what I've been through. You don't know the challenges I've faced as a biracial woman entering that institution. You're right, Whoopi said, voice cold. I don't know about entering palaces and marrying princes, but I do know about working 3 jobs to feed my family. I do know about being told I wasn't pretty enough, smart enough, or white enough for Hollywood. I do know about earning my place through talent and perseverance, not marriage. Meghan's composure finally cracked. How dare you diminish my achievements, suggesting I only got where I am through marriage. I was a successful actress before I ever met Harry. Successful. Joy interjected. Let's be honest about your career trajectory before the royal connection. This is exactly what I'm talking about, Meghan shrieked, desperation lacing her voice. You can't just let me exist without tearing me down. Every accomplishment questioned. Every struggle minimized. Sunny shook her head. Meghan, nobody's tearing you down. We're having a conversation about your public statements and actions. That's what happens when you put yourself in the public eye. Conversation. Meghan laughed bitterly. This isn't a conversation. It's a pile-on. 5 women ganging up on one because you can't handle the truth I'm telling. Lissa finally snapped. The truth you're telling. Meghan, you spent this entire interview attacking our integrity, questioning our motives, accusing us of racism because we dared to ask legitimate questions. They weren't legitimate, Meghan shot back. They were gotcha questions designed to make me look bad. This whole interview was a setup from the beginning, Meghan snapped. Sarah, who had tried to maintain calm throughout, finally spoke with frustration. Meghan, we asked about your public statements, your choices, your experiences. How is that a setup? Because you refuse to acknowledge the context, Meghan shot back, her voice cracking. You refuse to see the racism, the institutional bias, the way I've been systematically undermined and attacked. Whoopi had reached her limit. She rose, walking around the table toward Meghan, her presence commanding. You know what your problem is? She said, pointing. You think being a victim gives you the license to be awful to everyone around you. You think your pain justifies attacking anyone who doesn't validate every single thing you say. I'm not attacking anyone, Meghan protested, but her voice faltered. Now, really? Whoopi's eyebrows shot up. You've called us racist, accused us of victim blaming, suggested we lack basic decency, and questioned our integrity as journalists and as women. What would you call that? Meghan's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. I was defending myself, she finally managed, weakly. No, Joy interjected firmly. Defending yourself means explaining your position, providing context, correcting misunderstandings. What you did was attack us personally because you didn't like the questions. The questions were unfair, Meghan insisted, though even she sounded petulant. They were standard, Sunny said coolly. Any public figure should expect questions about their statements and actions. The fact that you can't handle accountability says more about you than it does about us. Whoopi returned to the head of the table, but remained standing, her stance signaling the interview's end. "Meghan, I've given you every opportunity to have a real conversation today," she said, voice deadly calm. "Instead, you've attacked this show, attacked this panel, and frankly, made a fool of yourself on national television." "I'm making a fool of myself." Meghan's voice rose. "I'm trying to have an honest conversation about important issues while you all gang up on me." "Honest conversation?" Alyssa laughed incredulously. "Meghan, you haven't answered a single direct question. Every time we ask something substantive, you deflect and attack us, because your questions are designed to trap me." Meghan shot back. "The only trap here," Whoopi said with finality, "is the one you set for yourself. And it's time for this interview to end." Meghan's eyes widened. "You're ending the interview." "I am," Whoopi confirmed, voice brooking no argument. "This isn't an interview anymore. It's a therapy session and we're not qualified therapists. You can't just kick me off." Meghan protested, desperation creeping in. "Actually, I can," Whoopi replied matter-of-factly. "It's my show, my set, my decision. And this conversation has run its course." Meghan glanced at the panel, seeking support, but found only stony faces and crossed arms. The reality sank in. "This is outrageous," she exclaimed, standing abruptly, chair scraping. "This is exactly the kind of silencing and bullying I was talking about." "Nobody silenced you," Joy said firmly. "You had plenty of opportunity to speak. You chose to attack us instead of engaging with the topics we gave you a platform," Sarah added, shaking her head. "And you used it to be disrespectful." Meghan scanned the room one final time, hoping for an ally, but found none. Her carefully constructed public persona lay in ruins. "You'll be hearing from my representatives," she said, gathering her things. "I'm sure we will," Whoopi replied calmly. "Security will escort you out." As Meghan stormed off, heels clicking sharply, Whoopi turned to the cameras, composure fully restored. "Well, that was something," she said to the stunned audience. "We'll be right back after this commercial break." The cameras cut away, but the damage was done. In one disastrous interview, Meghan had alienated an entire panel, exposed her entitled attitude, and delivered a television meltdown for the ages. What we witnessed was a masterclass in how not to handle scrutiny, dramatic collision of privilege, accountability, and spectacular failure.